So I request the session chair, Professor Said Najiullah Saab, HOD, Department of Public Administration, to come over the stage. And I request discussant of this session, Mr. R. Radhakrishna Saab, to join this. And I request Dr. Suresh Babu, JNU, New Delhi. Then I request Sajida Sultana to please come over this session. As you know, this session is a 2-hour online session. Two speaker will speak on online. So Professor Ibrahim Alauddin was born in Mauritius and educated in England, Canada, and Australia. And it is our pleasure that Professor Ibrahim is also a visiting faculty, Department of Sociology, MANUU, and he graduated from East London and honors a degree of Sociology, Public Administration. He spent 9 years in England. He joined the University of Alberta. He got his PhD from Melbourne, Australia, and he is also Horace Fellow. He is also a social activist, also a philanthropist, and also a writer. Last time when he visited our department, we enjoyed and we take the benefit of academic inputs, and we benefited for that. Now I request, sir, direct बोल दो क्योंकि online है ना, आप बोलो। So I request Professor Ibrahim to deliver his lecture.
Someone different name is there. Said Najiullah.
Professor Ibrahim?
I think they have not joined yet.
They haven't joined, okay.
Is it audible? Professor Ibrahim?
Is there any technical problem there?
Yeah, we are ready.
I don't know. I'm also away from them.
Where are you joining from?
I'm actually joining from Qatar.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And what do you do there?
Actually, I'm working in India. Past couple of days, I came here because my family is here, sir.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I'm working in Tamil Nadu. Maybe you are aware of that. Yes, sir.
I see. Where about in Tamil Nadu?
It's district Erode.
Erode. Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
Erode. There's a Bhavani River there.
Yeah, Bhavani Dam, Bhavani River is there.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe this is Velalor College of women's. Maybe women's education.
Okay.
They are confused. They are talking in between.
So,
Please start with that.
Hello, Professor Ibrahim.
Yes, good morning.
Let's start from you.
Are we starting the session?
Yes,
yeah,
it is.
they are telling you can start, sir.
You can start, sir.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Fine.
Thank you for inviting me to participate at this morning's panel. And I'm going to share. Hello.
Sir, we are getting you properly. You are audible to us.
Okay. All right. Can I proceed?
Yes, sir. Kindly deliver your lecture, sir.
Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone. This morning, I am going to share some thoughts on education for minorities, and in particular looking at social equity, national unity, and the role of education. Now, what I intend to do here is, I know it's a one-day seminar on building a Viksit Bharat through inclusive education. And within that framework, I am going to share some thoughts with you. Now, I am going to draw from 3 of my books, which I've written on education, minorities, and social integration. Okay. Now, can you see this book? Okay. This is the first book, which looks at the whole idea of multiculturalism in the 1990s, where we examine policies, practices, and implications. So it is a series of case studies involving several countries across the world. Okay, so I'm going to be drawing from that and talk about national policy. Okay. Then the second book I'm going to draw from, it's again a book we did on education, politics, and state in multicultural societies. Okay, and this is also a series of case studies we did to look at the role of minorities and social integration. And the third book I am going to refer to again is my own book. It's Teaching in a Global Society. And here I discuss and review a variety of teaching strategies which are designed to involve minorities in the classroom and their participation. Okay, so I'll be drawing from these books and share some thoughts with you. Now, we have done a lot of research in this area, and these 3 books capture some of the research that we have done over the last 30 years in the area of education, minorities, social integration, and looking at national policy. Now, this one-day seminar, I think it's important because it allows us to review and examine the Viksit Bharat through inclusive education, and in particular looking at this vision, Viksit Bharat 2047, which is a vision of the government of India to make India a developed nation, and by engaging all its citizens in the last 100 years. So the vision is to project India as a major developed society involving all its citizens. And it's a vision, it's an initiative, and I think some may call it rather ambitious, but nevertheless, it is a bold initiative to try to engage all aspects of Indian society. So having said that, I am also going to draw your attention to the Sustainable Development Goal number 3, so SDG number 4, which aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education. So that's also important. So we've got SDG number 4, which is aiming at inclusive education, and then we've got the Vision 2047 for India, which is again through education trying to integrate minorities and come up with policies and strategies to engage all its citizens. Now, when we talk about minorities and integration of minorities, let me begin by telling a story. And this story sort of captures the whole idea of participation, inclusion, and integration. So imagine an elephant. It's huge, big animal. And then you have a house. You have to get the elephant inside the house. So what are you going to do? There are a variety of activities you can involve to try to get this elephant inside the house. You can break the front door and push the elephant inside the house. That's one possibility. You can build another house just for the elephant outside in the garden. That's a second possibility. The third possibility is you will invite the elephant inside the house, build a place that is comfortable for the elephant, and you coexist with this animal inside the house. So here you have a variety of possibilities. Now, if we want to deal with the elephant as a separate animal, you build a house separately in the garden. You give the elephant food and water whenever needed, but the elephant has its own life and you have your own life. So you have your own house and the elephant has its own house. The second possibility is integration. Now, the first possibility is you are trying to live, it's called differentiation. You are different, the animal is different, there is no integration. The second possibility is integration, where you try to accommodate, and this is a very important word when we talk about national policy and integration of minorities, the word accommodation, how to accommodate. So the second possibility is trying to accommodate the elephant inside the house. So you remove the door, make it a bigger door so that the elephant gets inside the house and the elephant is comfortable. And then you are comfortable with the elephant being in that surrounding. The third possibility is you push the elephant inside the house and you make the elephant fit in the house. No structural changes, no renovation, no modification. The elephant is pushed inside and said, okay, here's where you're staying, here's food and water. And this we call, it's a forced policy. A policy that, minorities are forced into an area of integration where integration is forceful. It's not accommodation. When you are accommodating, you are actually taking the needs of the elephant, so it's accommodating. Integration can be forced integration. It is based on your vision of the society, and you try to get the elephant to live according to your vision. So you can see, when we talk about integration of minorities, when we talk about engaging minorities, so there are all kinds of policies, and these policies differ from country to country. For instance, we've got in our case study is the first one we did in the 1990s, trying to here in this book we've done case studies of UK, Australia, Canada, United States, Finland, Europe, Malaysia, trying to look at how these nations, they all have minorities, one sort or another. And then you try to integrate them at the national level. So these policies are very important case studies to look at what a number of countries have done over the years to try to integrate their minorities. And there are different emphasis. For instance, if you look at integration of minorities in the United States in the last 20 years, you will find a very different policy, as opposed to if you look at social integration of minorities in Canada in the last 20 years, again, same period, you will find a different approach altogether. And then you look at societies that have attracted minorities since the Second World War, countries in Europe like United Kingdom, France, Germany, after the Second World War, where the profile of the population has changed as a result of migration. Migration, different countries coming and settling down, bringing different values and different style of living, so cultural differences. So it's very important, therefore, over the years, you have policies at all level trying to accommodate, trying to integrate. So in the research literature, you'll find policies on social integration, policies on accommodation, policies on actually repressing minorities. So that has also happened. And South Africa is a very good example under apartheid, where the majority were pushed aside and not integrated at all. So that was very repressive. So you've got all these examples. And then what we did after that way, because remember the 1990s, very important as with wars and famine and natural disasters, but a lot of movement of large numbers of people moving, leaving their home country, forced out into exile and displaced as refugees. And many of them ended up in places that they had never thought they would live in. Okay, the war in the Gulf, the Iraq War, and so on in the 1990s, and then following up after the year 2000. So there was massive migration, and societies in like Canada changed dramatically. Look at even United States with the number of refugees entering United States. There were different policies, different needs. France, the same thing, and Europe. And then we've got nations with their own minorities, not necessarily displaced refugees settling in, but if you look at countries like Malaysia, it has its own minorities, okay? And over the years, there have been pressures on national governments to try to integrate these minorities, okay? Now, the study of social integration and minorities, and here I am going to draw your attention to some of the sociological studies that's been done and which provide a very useful framework to try to understand minorities and their integration. And here I would like to draw your attention, you may be already familiar, Max Weber's theory of class and his concept of social closure. Now, the concept of social closure is very important for us to understand minorities, because through a practice of closure, inclusion or exclusion, you can actually demarcate communities, you can demarcate minorities, you can divide them into different groups, into different status, and hence exercise control over them. So Max Weber's analysis of closure, social closure and inclusion is a very important step to try to understand why certain groups are closed, are excluded through deliberate policies. And then on the other hand, when you try to include, and here you are talking about inclusion, what does Max Weber mean by inclusion, and how inclusion can form part of a national policy of social integration? Now, again, staying on Max Weber's theory of social closure, his theory is quite different from, let's say, traditional Marxist theory of social class, which focuses and highlights conflict in society, and it is very in a classical sense, it's class based. Now, in Max Weber's theory of closure, the process here is quite different. It's not only that of conflict, while conflict may exist, but here Max Weber is talking about characteristics of the society, and also what are the attributes of social closure and how social closure, exclusion and inclusion is practiced. The process of inclusion and exclusion, according to Max Weber's analysis, these involve credentials, educational certificates, titles, wealth, okay? And these are very important in terms of exercising control and exclusion. So a person who is, let's say, has several educational qualifications and has been to some very good schools, now that person, by virtue of his or her education and qualifications, may be put into a category that gives that person a lot of privileges and advantages. And here, credential is very important. And you have, and I'll just illustrate this by an example. You may have an exclusive club. Let's say you have a club, a golf club. It's a private club. And the club can actually come up with a list of criteria for inclusion or exclusion. For instance, one could be wealth. If you have wealth, you may be admitted into this private club. If you have educational credentials from good institutions, you might be given admission. So, or if you have power, you have, depending on your occupation and your position in a particular company, you may be given admission to this club. So therefore, these can be used to allocate power and wealth in society. And Weber talks about how these can be used to exclude or include individuals and divide them into groups. Furthermore, to take Weber's analysis a little bit further, his notion of social closure, and we're talking here social closure, meaning both inclusion and exclusion, they are also important when we talk about power, race, gender, property, etc., and how all these different elements can be used to exclude or include people. So I would therefore draw your attention, if you want to go delve into a little bit further into the theory of social closure and exclusion, and here particularly we're talking about inclusive education. I think from a sociological point of view, it's important to look at how these could be analyzed at the societal level. And then following from Max Weber's notion of social closure, Frank Parking, another sociologist, Parking elaborate and extended Weber's analysis of social closure. So again, Frank Parking would be useful to look at how social closure and inclusion is practiced in the society. Okay. Now, when we talk about minorities, again, it's very important to look at if we are talking minority, then inevitably we are talking about majority and minority, because you can't have just minority, you need to have majority as well, or you can have majority and different minority groups. And now the panel discussion or the focus this morning is to look at the role of education. And here I am going to draw your attention to a model that we developed several years ago, try to explain the role of education in creating social
Sir,
equality.
Ivan,
Hello,
Sir,
can you hear me?
Ivan,
can you kind of
There's some
10 minutes?
interference.
can you bind up within 10 minutes? 5.
Yes, yes. So what's happening? So there's a model that was developed in Malaysia by a well-known sociologist. Name is Jasbir Singh, and she used education or school as a broker institution and examined the brokering function of education, how schools can be a mediating factor to overcome inequality. Okay? So the education, therefore, can be a tool for social mobility. And Jasbir Singh's analysis is looking specifically at the role of education. Now, there's a broad literature on the role of education and economic development and so on. So I'm not going to delve into that. But if you are looking at a particular model to try to look at the role of education in society, trying to overcome or reduce social inequality, then Jasbir Singh's analysis of the role of school as a brokering or a mediating institution is useful to look at. And her article appears in my book on education in education, politics, and state in multicultural societies. Okay, so that's a model this model is still useful, and we find when we're looking at trying to explain social inequality in society, especially when we talk about social inclusion and inclusive education, then we need to come up with models of how we can integrate those into social policy. Now, I know we are running out of time, and I also have to leave shortly. So I am going to leave the discussion here and would welcome any question from the participants. So thank you very much.
Babu.
Hello. Hello.
Le- Thank you very much for the insightful lecture where he talked about social exclusion and inclusion, and also talked about integration process, accommodation process, and inclusion. He talked about, gave the example about the house, how it accommodate. Then he talked about the school education is a prime role. It is a foundation role for the process of inclusion. Thank you. We are grateful to him. Next speaker is
I think they lost the connection. I think so.
Dr. Yasir. Is there? Yeah. He is the assistant professor and head of the Department of Sociology, VAT Institute of Arts and Science, Erode, Tamil Nadu. And he worked on sociology of education and sociology of health also, gerontology also. So I request to kindly deliver your lecture. Within 5 to 7 minutes? 10 minutes. 10 minutes, sir. Sir, it is audible?
Hello.
सर आई थिंक वो मोबाइल में अनम्यूट करके आप बोल सकता है नहीं नहीं मोबाइल कनेक्ट नहीं हो रहा है हाँ दैट्स व्हाई दे आर कनेक्टिंग
लैपटॉप में अनम्यूट कर सकते हैं
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Ibrahim sir, for giving this lecture over minorities. So it was nice hearing you. So they have told me to start my exercise. Yeah. So good afternoon, respected chair, distinguished colleagues, and esteemed participants. I am deeply honored to present my views on the topic higher education at the crossroads, tradition, modernity, and the future of Muslim women's educational trajectories. So, this theme invites us to think critically about how Muslim women access across the world and especially in South Asia are navigating the contested terrain between inherited traditions and modern aspirations. It's a story of struggle and resilience, negotiations between faith and freedom, and of how education becomes both a mirror and a catalyst for social transformation. As Sar was giving the example of the model which has been developed in Malaysia by some sociologist named as Jaspreet something, as I was like listening. Since India is having the second largest Muslim population, so a lot of trajectories, lot of issues, lot of struggles are there. If you go back to the history regarding colonial period or before that or Islamic period, lot of, that's what I told, there is a resilience, there is a struggle like that. When coming to the part of India whose diversity encapsulates many of these global partners, within a single nation. Muslim women face challenges both shared and unique, shaped by colonial history, constitutional secularism, socioeconomic marginalization, and regional diversity also. So, how Muslim women navigate higher education amid poverty, patriarchy, and prejudice? How states like Kerala, Uttar Pradesh, Bengal are representing contrasting realities, and how, despite formidable barriers, Indian Muslims are crafting their own moral and intellectual modernities. Friends, when we turn to India, the story of Muslim women higher education is both deeply local and profoundly global. It mirrors the largest Muslim world tensions between tradition and modernity, but also it carries its own distinctive complexities born from India's colonial legacy, colonial secularism, and communalized social structure. As I told you, that India has the second largest Muslim population in the world, with over 200 million people. Roughly, it comes around 15% of the total population as per we go with the census of 2011. Yet, Muslims constitute one of the most educationally backward and deprived communities. And within this group, women are doubly marginalized, either by gender and by community identity. The roots of educational marginalization deeply lies in the colonial era. Under the British rule, education became the instrument of both reform and exclusion, as the Macaulay system 1835, which shows that Western knowledge and English education alienating traditional Muslim institutions like madrasa and maktab. Muslim elites, fearing loss of cultural and religious identity, initially resisted colonial education, and it was figured like Sayyid Ahmad Khan who broke this impasse by founding the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College in 1837-75. Later, we now know it as a Aligarh Muslim University in Uttar Pradesh. His vision was to reconcile Islamic values with modern uh, uh, learning, an early example of what we today call educational hybridity. Yet this reform primarily benefited male elites. The education of Muslim women remained limited to home-based religious learning, where we were thinking that women are just to rear and care the children and take care of the home. Even Sayyid Ahmad Khan took cautious approach towards modern education of women, fearing it might erode traditional morality. And it was through Begum Ruqayya Sakhawat from Bengal that the movement for Muslim women education gained radical force, where he wrote the imaginary poem where she was discussing that male are taking care of the home and women are going out for daily, like as now the women are going out for the job. Same, he dreamt of this, and literally her school for girls founded in 1911 in Kolkata symbolized a turning point. And she wrote beautifully that the darkness of the parda lies not in the cloth but in the mind. That statement remains profoundly relevant even today. After 1947, independent India enshrined education as a fundamental right, and Article 30 granted minorities the right to establish educational institutions. However, the progress of Muslim women lagged behind due to socio-economic backwardness, political neglect, and gender seclusion, where different types of reports such as Sakshar Bharat Committee 2006 was a watershed moment. It provided empirical evidence, that Muslims as a community had educational indicators which are comparable to or worse than scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. As we see, female literacy among Muslims was found just 50% compared to the national average of 65%. Higher education participation stood at a mere 3%, which was alarming for Muslim women, one of the lowest among all the social groups, which is the Government of India report. So, the barriers confronting Muslim women in India are multidimensional. For example, economic marginalization, where a large proportion of Indian Muslims belong to lower income, engaged in informal or self-employed occupations. Even when education is free, hidden costs such as transportation, uniform, books, digital access, which remains prohibitive. Like gender norms and early marriage, which is a traditional gender norm, which continue to emphasize early marriage and domestic roles. Even I conducted my research in which was socio-cultural barriers among Muslim girls in achieving higher education. there also this gender norm was prevalent. By finding out this result, that this continues to emphasize that there is a domestic role, there is early marriage, and many communities sending a girl to distant college is seen as compromising family honor, like we call it as izzat. Therefore, geographically, accessibility and proximity of women's education or women's college become critical factors for participation. Number 3, stereotyping and discrimination. Muslim women, especially those who wear hijab or niqab, often face stigma and exclusion in mainstream institutions. And recently, I was reading the news that Italy is going to ban the hijab. That's another alarming, stereotyping and discrimination. Like hijab ban controversy in Karnataka recently in 2022, which reveals how education has become a site of identity politics. There's an institutional invisibility. Despite constitutional rights on Muslim managed institutions remain few and under-resourced. And ASH report, All India Survey on Higher Education 2023, states that only about 4.3% of the students in universities belong to Muslim community, with women constituting less than half of that share. This points to the urgent need for community-driven capacity building. As we state that Viksit Bharat 2047, we have to go a long way, as Professor Ibrahim sir also was speaking about that. Integration and differentiation. So there are the positive developments which we talk about, emerging spaces for change. The southern states, like we call it as Kerala model. Kerala represents a transformative success story, with the state's overall literacy, which exceeds 96% Muslim women, have been major beneficiaries of its inclusive policies. There are some institutions like the college in Calicut, Faroe College, Malabar Educational Society, which have pioneered female education within the umbrella of Islamic cultural framework. So, Kerala's Muslim women now dominate professional streams, which we call it as STEM, or medicine, teaching, and even engineering. Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, they are expanding their horizons despite the hijab controversy. Many districts, as like Dakshina Kannada and Udupi, have high female literacy and active Muslim women's colleges. Institutions like Bibi Aisha Mili Girls College, Gulbarga, they have created safe spaces for women to pursue higher studies. And recently, the government of Karnataka, they have given the 1 day off for girls during the menstrual cycle. So Tamil Nadu presents another interesting case where Dravidian social reform movement indirectly benefited Muslim women by normalizing female education across the communities. The presence of minority scholarship schemes, community college, has further expanded the participation. Talking about the North India, the Aligarh tradition and new college, Aligarh Muslim University remains the symbolic heart of Muslim higher education. The women's college, founded by Sheikh Abdullah and his wife Wahid Jahan Begum, continues to nurture thousands of female scholars, particularly the Muslim girls. However, the challenge lies in connecting AMU's legacy to grassroots transformations. States like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar still have, low Muslim female enrollment, particularly in science and technology disciplines. So, social mobility through education remains concentrated among urban elites, leaving rural women behind. Similarly, Jammu and Kashmir education as a resistance and renewal, where there is the context is very unique. Decades of conflict disrupted schooling and access to universities, but education became as an act of resistance, a means to reclaim agency and dignity. Like post 2010, we have seen that Kashmir University, Islamic University of Science and Technology, and Central University of Kashmir has seen the surge in female enrollment within the disciplines of social science and literature. So, what we need to fill the gaps. Sorry.
Yes, it's up.
Yes, sir.
Within 2 or 3 minutes.
Just
Can you
yeah, just I will
please?
conclude. Yeah. So, what is the way forward towards inclusive educational future? To envision the future of Muslim women's higher education in India, we have to move beyond tokenism to transformative policy. The policy integration is important. The institutional diversity is very important. Recently, the education policy of NEP 2020, which is explicitly addressing the intersectional inequalities. More Muslim women in universities and colleges should be established, particularly in undeserved regions of North India and Northeast. Digital and distance education, which can bridge the mobility barriers for rural women. Community-based digital centers run by women graduates, which can revolutionize the outreach. And regarding the curriculum reform, critical pedagogy that include Islamic intellectual history, feminist hermeneutics, and social justice ethics are very important to foster cultural confidence and analytical rigor. So let us see Muslim women in India and indeed across the world stand at the intersection of tradition, modernity, and futurity. At this crossroads, education is not simply a means of employment or mobility, but it's an act of resistance, which is against the stereotypes, an act of renewal of the intellectual legacy of Islam, and an act of revelation, uncovering forms of ethical citizenship. So, what are the future pathways towards global and ethical framework for Muslim women's higher education? Friends, dear colleagues, and fellow educators, let us turn our gaze towards a future that's already taking shape in classrooms, research centers, and digital spaces across the Muslim world and beyond. So, as in the Islamic perspective, knowledge is ilm, which is not merely instrumental, it is sacred. The first revelation to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ikra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq, read in the name of your Lord who created, places learning at the heart of the faith. So Hadith and Quran emphasizes that the pursuit of knowledge is obligatory for every Muslim, whether it is a male or female alike. This is not optional right, but moral duty, a principle that predates Western feminism over centuries. So therefore, to conclude my remarks, so as educators and policymakers and believers in knowledge, let us ensure that the next generation of Muslims, or particularly Muslim women, no longer asks, "Can I study?" but instead they declare, "Through knowledge, I will serve." So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak on Muslims higher education especially. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Yasir Asra.
Thank you so much.
He talked about the law of culture and Muslim empowerment and gave example of Kerala model. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we have a offline mode. So I request Sajida Sultana. She's working in TIS, Tata Institute of Social Science, Hyderabad, Center for English Language and Development, and she taught there in the department like academic language skill, minority education, teaching English, and sociology of education, English language need for corporate sector. So I request her to, how much time, sir? 10 minutes.
It's okay. It's fine. Zia said there was a PPT. Maybe I'll start and then the PPT can be put, because certain images I thought that should be important. A very good afternoon to each one of you. Okay. At the outset, I'd like to thank Ziauddin sir and all of you. I think MANUU community has always been very welcoming. I was here earlier for another round of conferences. That was long ago, but I'm always happy to be here. And now today, I would like to talk a bit about how language, identity, and what is that dynamics that come into play when we talk about curriculum. So it's going to be focused more on language and specifically from the point of view of English language. So what here I try to argue is that language education, especially English language education, has generated a larger debate that deals with nationalism, identity, and class. And somewhere we are able to also see that language kind of gets connected with development. In the PPT, I have put it, but as the PPT is up, I'll also begin my presentation by narrating experiences from two students. These are students, or rather I would say one student and one PhD scholar, people like most of us in the audience. So on their experiences of language, one MA student from the ISS, they said, my first experience to come in contact with English language was was at primary school in class 5, when one subject was basic English, and I first learned to write and pronounce English alphabets for about a month. The medium of instruction, my village school, was completely Marathi. Hence, we were learning English, seeking full support of Marathi. This is from an MA student. Now, another PhD scholar has mentioned that I started my education at a government school with a medium of instruction as my mother tongue, that is Malayalam. Till my higher secondary school, I used to write answers in Malayalam. I still remember how we started learning English pronunciation in the 3rd standard. We used to write the Malayalam words instead of understanding the language. Now, the reason for bringing these two responses is to make us think about the different ways in which students negotiate with the multiple languages in a linguistically diverse academic context, and with the proficiency that they hold in various languages. Now, what happens is that at a university space, we are not able to recognize these languages, and when we do not recognize these languages, what happens is that this kind of diminishes the potential of students. So, from the perspective of NCF and NEP 2020, which I'm going to kind of discuss, what we need to do now is to acknowledge the linguistic capital of our students in university spaces. During one of the panelists, like when we began, elephant was used as an analogy, and I kept thinking that with respect to language, can there be one elephant that we can talk about? There are multiple elephants that are there, and how we have to start accommodating all that. So acknowledging the linguistic capital of students, their experiences that they bring in, and valuing multilingualism, we boost the self-esteem of students so that they are able to successfully pursue their dream. Now, what also matters here is institutions' policy on student multilingualism. That becomes really critical. And as I already said, that ignoring or devaluing a student's home language in an educational environment is deeply diminishing to both individual students and to their communities. Now, language here, I'm talking of all the languages that we represent in this room and in all the university spaces. Now, from a policy perspective, this raises the question of locating indigenous languages, which where we see that from a policy perspective, thanks, full screen please. From a policy perspective, what we then see is that we keep talking about the three-language formula, or the TLF. So now this three-language formula in section 4.13, it mentions that the three-language formula will continue to be implemented while keeping in mind the constitutional provisions, aspirations of people, regions, and the union, and the need to promote multilingualism as well as promote national unity. However, there will be a greater flexibility in the three-language formula, and no language will be imposed on any state. Now, that is what is mentioned in our NEP section 4.13. Now, at the same time, I'd like to also kind of compare it with NCF, which was a framework document in 2005. Now, there I have looked at only the teaching of English paper. There are multiple other guidelines and framework that NCERT came up with. Now, the three-language formula we also saw then in 2005, and we are roughly talking about 20 years ago. Now, there again, we saw that students' mother tongue must be recognized as linguistic capital and a resource for teaching English, not as an obstacle. Slide 2 or 3, we can. Yes. Yes, so the three-language formula in NCF group paper on teaching of English, there again we are talking about linguistic capital and a resource for teaching English, which is our home language, is our first language. And they've also said that this perspective necessitates the adoption of multilingual pedagogy to validate the student's identity and ensure that English learning is communicative, meaningful, and inclusive. Now, from these two texts that we have just heard, what our experiences tell us is that we are yet to realize the effectiveness of the three-language formula. NCF does talk about how there should be no imposition of one language in any state, but going on with the kind of debates and discussions that are happening in the mainstream media about language, the picture is in front of us. So we are yet to realize the effectiveness of the three-language formula, where we utilize the first language of our students and not adhere to the rigidity of considering language and or the language learning process as a mechanical process, as ineffective learning by ignoring the actual home languages or first language of the students. Next slide, please. To understand the language and curriculum, which is kind of connected to language, we are always talking about curriculum. It's also important to understand that language and identity are, that it has a complex relationship, especially in the post-colonial India. And what we see is that there is a shift from English as a colonial marker to its contemporary role as a symbol of modernity and social mobility. Now, today, English is perceived no longer carrying the colonial marks of its origin. Instead, as Shalini Advani has mentioned, it is reinscribed with new meanings. Everyone in India, the marginalized, the poor, want to learn English. It is a language that is Indian, like many other languages, but it is perceived as enabling access to the world. Now, I did my study from EFLU. I looked at the English teaching practices in madrasa. So I completely concur, I completely conform to the ideas that Shalini Advani is talking about, and therefore the basis of this is also based on my study, where I'm saying that English is a language that is no longer colonial. Everyone wants to learn it. Next slide, please. To trace the historical trajectory of the English language debate in India, highlighting its pivotal role in shaping the national and individual self-identity, after independence, the question of language was critical to the post-colonial predicament, involving the shift from the language of colonizer to its absorption as an Indian language. So what we also see is that across different classes, across different regions, there is a conviction that education is the ladder to social mobility, and knowledge of English is essential component of entering the modern world. The NCF paper on teaching of English emphasizes that identity is directly linked to students' linguistic background and their sense of belonging. And this NCF paper also insists that students be viewed as highly accomplished, multilingual learners or individuals with valuable linguistic capital. And we shouldn't be seeing them as deficient in the instruction of that language. So a teacher or institution must acknowledge this multilingualism for their academic accomplishment. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide, I'll just keep it there because, and also this is an image from an actual textbook used in one of the madrasas. This was collected during my PhD data collection process. This is a text of English used in one of the madrasas in northern part of India. The text is open for discussion. It talks about, there are multiple readings to this. I'm not getting into the readings, but you can all have a look at it, and I'll also be talking here. So the construction of identity, that text is a classic example. The construction of identity within the English curriculum in India is a complex process, where if we look at the textbooks, these textbooks act as our cultural artifacts. These are designed by the state to shape the so-called ideal citizen. Now, the curriculum is used as a critical lens to examine the shifting meanings of nationalism and modernity in the post-colonial era. And these textbooks, in general, they also reflect the contemporary social identity of India. Now, despite the ideological underpinnings, the curriculum has a determined and exclusive focus on an instrumentalist, pragmatic approach to English. Now, English is not just a language of literature, but a practical tool necessary for mobility, access to world, knowledge, and power. Next slide, please. Now, the curriculum, when we look at curriculum, we are also looking at who are these authors for these textbooks. Apparently, when we look at textbooks which are followed in our education system, it's produced by the state. is produced by the state. So there is some form of anonymity, or there's an anonymous author there, but it's not actually anonymous, we know that. But this anonymity that we are talking about is surprisingly a prerequisite of their ideological functioning. So NEP 2020, trying to wind up, the NEP 2020, it mandates a complete overhaul of textbooks. So what you see on the screen are actual screen grabs of books which are in use as of now. So students are reading these texts. One is from classroom 8, the other is from classroom 3. So this is the complete overall of textbooks that NEP has brought in. And what NEP is also saying is that this education needs to be holistic, it needs to be inclusive. So this image is just for us to understand whether we are able to see the concepts of inclusivity, the holistic approach. If you're able to see it, well and good. If you're not able to see it, as researchers, please raise those questions. The other thing that UGC has also mandated is the introduction of Indian knowledge system. All universities it is happening, it's happening. I'll talk from a university perspective, it's happening in the universities. So what it also talks about is the use of bilingual material. Now both NEP and NCF paper that I was referring to, both in a way are philosophically unified. Both advocate a shift from a restrictive, deficit-based model to a flexible, multilingual, and communicative approach. And NCF here talks about how language should be used more as a resource, not as a handicap. The NEP has then codified this perspective and converted it into a more comprehensive national policy, where NEP is formalizing multilingualism and home language. So now what we see is that NEP has broadened the scope to require the integration of IKS or the Indian knowledge system. Now it is up to us as researchers to even question that what do they, or how is this, how are the terms which appear here as Indian knowledge systems, what is Indian, what kind of India is being promoted through the language, so-called English. The images are in front of us. And when we talk about knowledge, what knowledge is being spread? So what is Indian and what is the knowledge that we're talking about? And next slide, please, which is my final slide. So when we're talking about and going by the safe theme, and because everything gets connected to development, I will end my presentation with these questions for you, which are also inspired from another very famous educator, so sure you can call him Michael West, Michael Apple, or Michael West Apple, sorry. When we look at knowledge, we need to question what knowledge is of most worth, whose knowledge is of most worth, whose knowledge becomes socially legitimate in any curriculum or in any institution. And again, there are questions that deal with our first language, our home languages, how inclusive those are. And at any institutional level, are we telling our students that you leave your language, your culture outside the classroom, or are we welcome to the idea of students' language, students' culture? And then what is our position, and as educators, as academicians, where do we stand and what can we do about it? That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sajida Sultana. Lot of question you put. I think so Karl Mannheim will answer sociology of knowledge. And she brought a important like language as a identity and modernity. I also talked about how the language play a Indian knowledge system. So it is a very wonderful session. Now I request
Dr. Suresh Babu. He teaches at Jawaharlal Nehru University, and he wrote several books in a good publication he has in a Routledge, recently Culture and Learning 2024, Contextualizing Education Studies in India, Education and Public Sphere, Habermas, 2020. And he has a member of several bodies advisor, policy press, so many were. He worked on caste, education, gender, and tribal issues. And the good thing about Suresh Babu is he's my good friend. That's why, and a good human being from the student life, I know him. So I request Suresh Babu to please deliver here.
Thank you, Vivek. At the outset, thanks for the university Department of Sociology and my good friends in the Department of Sociology, especially Zia and Vivek, inviting me to be part of this discussion. I know I don't have much of time to speak, but nonetheless, I would roughly call this my presentation like the from crisis to resistance, locating the minority voices in academia. This is precisely based on my research. I don't want to speak anything on rhetoric because I'm a researcher, works on the field of education last more than 13 years. Because a lot of rhetorics, now everybody can speak on NEP, right? It becomes a common language. I would call it as a normative. And everybody now talks about NEP and the features of the NEP. As a result, it becomes almost a normative language. Hence, I would be taking more of a critical to it, just to pardon me, in the sense that this policy has not come to the parliament. And no parliamentarian got a chance to discuss in the parliament. I don't know how much legitimacy he got it or not. Right? This is a very contested issue. First time in the history of India, there is a policy, it was not debated in the parliament. So I begin with saying that I'm very critical to it. There is no legitimacy to this policy. That is the beginning of the crisis on education and the polity. Both. This is the beginning of the crisis, both in education as well as the policy. And the crisis also rests somewhere else. So I will be addressing largely just a view. Just a view. I don't want to go to the details of it. I would address some of these views in terms of the language of crisis and how NEP opened up a new Plandara box of the crisis. Right? You have a set of crises. I will be briefly rushing up to just to make sense of how one should understand the crisis in the NEP, and it has its own history. Second set of problem is that how students understood NEP and what are the expressions, views about NEP by a group of students, especially in the universities. It began almost in 2020 onwards. I've been tracking last 12 years. I've been tracking almost mainstream media, how much they could capture the students' voices, right? I start analyzing the data also. I got a huge data set. I don't want to display anything outright. I would just say that the second set of my argument is that we are very poor in doing research on education, especially looking at the new generation of students, what they think about, what they discuss about, what they express it, what are the experiences they have when they study in the institutions, especially the issue of language. Right? These are the questions we never discuss in the policies, even the public domain also. The third set of question I wanted to address, the issue of democracy. What is the relationship with democracy and education? That I go back to my textbook again to revoke John Dewey, never studied in India, no sociologists discuss on John Dewey, no educational discuss about John Dewey. And he was one of the best teachers Ambedkar ever referred to. Right? So there is a paradox in understanding what is the relationship between education and democracy. So these are the set of crises I want to open it for, just to provoke all of you, a new generation of scholars, to sit to think about what would be the future of education and future of a society. That's what. I was reading some of a literature about, I'm not going back to what is policy all about. An anthropologist in 80s onwards start moving around India, and he discussed with some of the parliamentarians, those who were in the parliament, those who were, that time they were also parliamentarians. He asked simple a question that, what effort you made to make education as a fundamental right? Right? We have been fighting. We got it in 1993, right? Remember? So there was no serious deliberation in the parliament on the question of how to make education as a fundamental right. Right? It has not become a part of constitutional mandate. So he was asking this question. And then he came to the conclusion that most of the politicians do not like to have it. Right? But outside the parliament, just to listen to the politicians, just to listen to the politicians speaking outside the parliament. Day before yesterday, minister was in Tamil Nadu. Right? We made a rocket policy. NEP is done. Who prepared NEP? Rocket scientist. And then 2 days back, he said that there is a quantum jump. Quantum jump. Yesterday in UP, in Bihar, we had another language, world class. You want to make a world class, Bihar is going to get, before election, you may get around 20 universities. Look at the rhetoric we played out outside of the parliament. We never talk, we never discuss education as a fundamental right. We never ask this question in the parliament. This is a great paradox in Indian democracy, in the parliamentary system. Why they were not liking it? Here comes the question. If you are educated the citizens, you ask fundamental questions. So no politician wants to listen the dissent, critique. That's why. So I would say this is the right time to ask fundamental questions as a researchers, educationalists, as a student, as a citizens. This is the right time. Therefore, I'll take it very seriously, NEP, not in terms of as a normative language. I see as a critical language. It needs to be explored further and further. It is not against the policy. Right? Policy is for the citizens. Policy is made for the future of a society. It also gives a direction to us, certainly. But just to look at the policies. In America, we had only one policy. Way back, almost 60 years back. They never had. Why? Completely decentralized. They never thought of having a policy. For us, every government changes, you got a policy. The current government also got a new policy. So what is the relationship? What is the symbiotic relationship between a regime and the policy? Why we are not asking this fundamental question? Why there is a requirement of a policy when the government changes? Where are intellectuals? Where are academics? We are not, including me, we become normative now. That's why somebody in the first presentation said, no. Integrate it, accommodate it. Last I would say, enforce it. So policy becomes more coercive in nature. You have to implement it. This is it. Dictatorship of the dictators. NEP is all about that. I think we all are realizing it. I don't think any of the teachers would agree with NEP. Right? Touch on your heart and speak. Would you agree with? I would not resist it. That is the beginning of the crisis. It's also related to my mind. It's also related not merely in terms of looking at the policy structure, but also look at the outlier. What is the outlier? There are two sets of issues. One, the dynamics of economy is such. We talk about knowledge economy. So knowledge economy needs more demography being educated, right? The knowledge economy is that. We need more citizens to be educated so that this economy will grow. Knowledge becomes the backburner to the growth of economy. That knowledge commission clearly outlined what would be the future of economy, what would be future of education, what are the economic progress we are going to set in the future. I think in 90s, Manmohan Singh he flew to World Bank, he was invited, and a wonderful work. He spoke it and paper was available, I think, maybe available. And he laid down the plan for the future of higher education, right? So 90s onwards, there is a shift happening in the policies, especially because of the knowledge economy and the neoliberal economy. So there is a expectation from the economy that we are going to have a economic speed of economic growth, and that growth has to be fueled through education. So certainly there is an investment in education also happened from 90s onwards. We got a central universities, so on and so forth. Certainly because of some of this boost, thought process in education. What was the crisis? The crisis is there's a lack of perspective into it, right? My question is that if economy is the priority, right, and what will happen to education? It becomes an instrument, right? You think about, say, look at the capitalist economy. What is the motive behind capitalist economy? Look at the private education, private institutions, private universities, those who are working in the private universities. What is the motive? Right. So economy, if you put the economy as a priority, as a perspective, then you look at the future of education. It bounds to happen. It becomes an instrument. It becomes a tool. Sociology would say, sociology would say that is a tool of empowerment, mobility, so on and so forth. It's a tool of economic growth. So we got a human development theory at the center to argue with this. It got a lack of perspective. As an education, I would say, we should have given priority to education and see to that the future of economy. We never thought of. Right? What happened? That's what. So there's a lack of perspective. And this is also equally responsible for the academics. Including me, we do not have a vision for the future of education. Kerala said that we invest on people. Right? So we need a perspective. The NEP 2020 is devoid of perspective. It doesn't have a perspective. Correct. The third set of crisis, G.N. Devi is an educationalist linguist. He would argue that there are three set of crises, especially in the context of higher education. He says that there is an embracing of a tradition, civilization. I would take identities very critically, not for other purpose. Identity. Right. So we embrace identity. We embrace civilization. We embrace culture without critically looking at what extent this tradition can make you modern. Therefore, this indigenous knowledge also problematic. Right? What extent your tradition would give you a way forward to make you modern, including the question of language, but Madam also saying, certainly is. The second crisis, he says that huge investment has been made in education, but this investment now you see in the private sector, right? More and more private sector coming up, private universities coming up, and there is a retreat of the state. State hardly spend 4%, right? Hardly 4%. And most of the education say that we need a minimum 10% of the GDP, right? We got a hardly 4%. This is one of the second criteria of crisis. There is a withdrawal of the state and then huge investment by the private sector. Don't you think so? It's going to be an exclusion, right? Another set of crises, some of the education, especially policymakers, says that the policy itself is in crisis. Right? Policy itself is in crisis. NEP. That is very clear. Right? I was looking at the data. Last 10 years of data we have collected on social from media, print media. It will clearly show that how students articulated this crisis. Many academics do not know how much our students articulated last 5 years. It's amazing, right? So I would say the future lies with the students, your voices, how you experience the university spaces, and they're open to question it. This is the positive aspect I see from this crisis. So as a student of sociology, I would say that the discipline of sociology itself born out of a crisis, right? Therefore, there is a hope, not because of NEP, I don't think. It is because of the new generation of students. So some of my argument, I would say that we should be listening. We should be giving adequate attention to what students think, what they express, what they experience it. I think that is going to shape the future of society and the knowledge domain. It is not the tradition. Right? And now we made as a, when you speak anything, it becomes you become a criminal. Right? So there is a criminalization happening in the field of education, especially targeting teachers and students. Right? We should be aware about, because university belongs to us, not for the politicians. We should take ownership to it. Right? Maybe give me 1 minute. Let me summarize it. I have a great fan of democracy because we believe in Ambedkar's philosophy, because I think it's very important in our context. Rethinking democracy is very important ourselves as a citizens, right? We are not just normals to just listen what dictators say, right? It's very important. We should be voicing ourselves. We should be expressing our views. That is the crux of democracy. I would say there are 3 things very important in this context of democracy, because it become more abstract in category. I would say that what critical lessons one should be learned as an educationalist, or which is useful or meaningful for educationalists, is that no matter whether you are a Muslim or not, or a Dalit, we have a sense of belonging in this nation. Understand? Nobody wants, you don't listen to anybody who is talking about who is defining what is nation. We belong to a nation. We should see that we belong to this nation. We should have a sense of belonging, right? That is a democracy guaranteed to us. This belongs to us, no political party, any political party. This sense of belonging, I think, is very especially for the marginalized communities, right? Everybody is thinking that the nationalism can be defined by somebody else. No, we all can define, because we should have a sense of belonging, right? Many scholars say that Muslims had a problem after partition. Muslims are in crisis. I don't think it belongs to all of us. That we have to possess it. We have to take a collective ownership to it. Second one, this is also, we should be participating, not being isolated. We should be participating all the processes. Then only democracy works. Then only education also works. Then only knowledge progresses. We are not just a recipient of knowledge. We should also participate in. Education has to be more revolutionary in the sense that participating in the process of knowledge production as well. The third one, I would say, dignity of life. Very important. So these 3 values are very important for education and democracy to function. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I think so. All have enjoyed this lecture, this panel discussion, and all the question answer session we will do during lunch time.
1 hour time.
So that will be good for us. And now I request Mr. R. Radhakrishna, who is serving as the officers on special duty and chairman of Telangana Council for Higher Education. I don't want to give more introduction because lunchtime.
Thank you, Professor Zia, and all the organizers of MANUU. It has been quite a learning experience attending this talk, and I see myself more of a participant and a spectator rather than a discussant. And not that I want to take any undue advantage of being OSD to the chairman of the Telangana Council of Higher Education. All the four speakers have raised very thought-provoking questions, because I'll be very generic within those 5 minutes. Why it is important? Firstly, how do we look at education? Are we looking at university as a site of contestation? That is one important issue. And how language could also lead to social and cultural capital, which Professor Sajida had raised. And what Professor Suresh had raised is a larger question of, nation, nationalism, and civic citizenship in the larger picture when you talk about education. And I also remember, listening to Professor Ganesh Devi more than a decade ago in Pune, where he talked about languages which are going extinct and the threat because of the so-called, mainstream. Now, certainly, state is a site of contestation. I think we have to also look at the paradoxical position. We have to reclaim the state, and we have to also reclaim the nation in the larger run. Because role of market and technology, as most of you have said, that there's a fear of, shrinking state. The authority of state is also getting diluted because the way capitalistic order is, manifesting itself. There is a fear whether we'll become a soft state in terms of lacking the institutional capacity to implement our own rules and regulations. Even Guna Medal had talked about it. Yes, it would create a very chaotic situation if you have a polarizing society, dysfunctional state. It will make situation all the more vulnerable. And every state is known by the rights it maintains, as Professor Harold Lasky had also said once upon a time. So if it is, in David Eastanian sense, if it is authoritative allocation of values, then it should be guided by democracy, justice, fairness, equality, and equity. Now, the larger issue, what I would look at is that where is the civil society when the policy framing and other issues are coming in? I won't really digress much, and I don't want to sound biased that Professor Suresh is also from JNU, but the larger issue is dignity of life is something universal. University represent multiple universes, to say the least. So if it is Viksit Bharat, if it is NEP, so we need to address it on a larger canvas. That is a picture which I'm getting. And the last thing when it comes to dignity, just a small example. I think sometimes there's nothing wrong in having a comparative study. When we could, address so many countries' constitution, when Baba Sahib was framing the constitution, why don't we also, look at the education system of Japan? Ma'am had mentioned about Finland, and even Sweden for that matter, apart from US and others. So that is something which I think we need to address in terms of having a broader perspective. Thank you one and all, because I said the lunch is waiting for us. And my 5 minutes are over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Discussion about inclusive policy, rethink about our policy, what the Suresh also talked about, the crisis in policy, legitimacy on the policy, but we are blindly following. Now, I request Professor Syed Najullah sir, who is our colleague and good friend and also mentor. We organize several conferences, and I request Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Vivekananda, for the introduction, and Dr. Zia and team for inviting me to be chair. And I know I'm standing between you and your lunch. आपको लोगों को अब भाषण की नहीं, भोजन की जरूरत है. तो मैं सिर्फ अपनी इसलिए मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, I'm cutting short my 10-minute speech into 5 minutes. So I want to talk 5 things here. 4 important topics have been dealt very, very diligently by our very lend speakers. We were talking about, as we said, about the theoretical aspects of education. Then we had a very, very important talk about the language. Then we also had a talk on women education from Tamil Nadu, and the Professor Sudhakar Sir's talk on democratization of education is something which should be the goal of this whole conversation. If you are going to that, we are going to achieve that goal, I think this seminar, I consider, will be a big success. Now, some points I want to raise, because this has been organized by Sociology Department along with Muslim students organizations. I think, and in the context of Muslim empowerment and NEP. So I think 5 points are important in this. Quality education. Education to sabko mil raha hai. So are we getting quality education? I'm talking in the context of Muslims, because when we say education for all, and NEP also talks then education, then there are two kinds of education in India. So one is the private sector and in the government sector. So and in government sector also we have again two models, highly quality. Then so what kind of education we are getting? Whether NEP has addressed this kind of a level, what it has come with an answer that there should be one quality level in India. Did we have that? No. Then what should be the kind of thing when we judge about education among Muslims? Are they getting quality education? Are they just getting education? Are they getting low education? This should be a discussion. This should be a topic of research for you, if not now, in the further sessions, or not further sessions, further in coming years, so that we will get quality education. This is directly linked with SDG 4 and SDG 4, more than that, our own ambitions of becoming Vishwa Guru, that is Viksit Bharat. That is possible with only knowledge and quality education. America is dominating because it has knowledge, not weapons. Okay, so this is one thing. And whether this component of our population, Muslims, or all marginalized groups, are they getting? This debate should be there. Second point is inclusive education. Are we having inclusive atmosphere to get inclusive education? So are we embracing people from education, or we are making them go away? So some issues have been discussed, like in Karnataka, they wanted to come to education, and you said you have to come in this way. Then are we including or excluding? These are the things. See, these that means it is cultural diversity has to be accepted in plural societies, and that is the only way to success, and this is the only way to Viksit Bharat. Viksit Bharat goes through inclusive education, and that inclusive education, so whatever hurdle comes, if it's burqa is hurdle, we have to take it away. If burqa is enabling, we should welcome it. Just we welcome the Sikh regiment, we welcome the Gurkha regiment, we welcome with their names, because we know they bring value. So if you say, if you are coming with burqa, this is becoming enabler, you accept it. That is how we be inclusive, particularly in societies, diverse societies and plural societies. So inclusivity is second thing we should address as academicians, as also policy makers. I'm very happy Radha Krishnan is an advisor. That's a great position, in fact, than the chairman. So I think he was very keenly listening all these things, very attentively. I'm very happy that you are here. So then third thing is, I have also social justice. That means what kind of education is going to whom? So all are the people getting same kind of education? I'm not just talking about minorities, Muslims and all that. So the kind of, we are giving, for example, we have reservations. So a lot of people are coming into government, public sector. So now we are giving social justice. Is it all? No. There is a lot of education happening in private sector where there is no social justice. Is there social justice there in private sector? No. How you accommodate them? You may be not necessary that do reservation there also. Bear their scholar education, fund their education. It happened in Andhra Pradesh, in Telangana particularly, during Rajshekar Reddy's period. Good examples of government we should take up. That is scholarships till saturation point. That means not scholarship for only SC, ST, BCs. Saturation means whoever is eligible applied, he will get. It has controlled corruption, and it has also enabled people get into medicine, engineering. Not only that, I told you, cutting across all things, Hindu, Muslim, and also SC, SC, BC. So this kind of justice in education, that should be the concern when we are talking about in the context of Muslims and all that. Another thing is the question of language. So which language? Urdu, English, Hindi, Tamil. So which language actually we are talking about when we really talking about, and NEP says, it again renewed the debate in the, what you call, our vernacular languages. Is a mother tongue में teaching honi chahiye, knowing very well that is not going to happen in coming future. Knowing very well, because all these people who are there in the policy, they may not be, their children are not taking education in that. So, well aware of the fact that they take that. Now, there is a need to integrate this contradiction of our own culture and language and the modernity. As just talking about English, he said that is the approach to modern education and development. I buy some of these arguments. It's true also. So then, when we are saying, no, let the education be in mother tongue, then whom we are imposing? Only the people in your hand, that is in government schools. The other people who are already not in your hand, that is the elite people, you can't do any policy to them. They will give policy to you. They will decide your policy. And the policy is not implemented on them. Very tragedy of the irony of the thing is that they will dictate the policy, but the policy will not, they will not affect them. So this is the irony of things. So in that context, I am telling that we should have a kind of a, if I say no, English should follow, then there will be a lot of human caring. I have one example here, very, very good model in our own university. No university in India and other places also will be teaching English in PG level to all subjects. So we are teaching in a mother tongue. I am saying not that this is best thing. I am telling this is a kind of model where we can integrate this very, very difficult debate to live modernity or in our culture. So this is again a big issue we have to be here. And last thing is that how we link it to our jobs, opportunities, and that is very important. If you say you take education but no jobs, no one will come. That means you have made job, education is free, but the doors of jobs are not open. Then we have to see that when you have created opportunities in education, the opportunities should also be created there. What we can do. These are the things, not answers, but questions, larger issues. Some of them I have taken from here, our very length panelist discussions, and some of them I think that you will take up, you will discuss these 5 things in relation with the empowerment of Muslims, and in the coming days we will come out with some good kind of output of this seminar. I'm very happy that Dr. Zia and their team have gathered all academicians and also policy makers, or say policy people. I'm very thank you to all of you for bearing me, I think, for more than 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The chairperson has a lot of things to say, and all the panelists also given but time is, we don't have the time. So now I request for appreciation and felicitation to our panelists. I request Dr. K.M. Jiauddin to come out. He is a convener of this seminar, to facilitate today's chairperson, Professor Syed Najiullah Saab, who is a HOD of Department of Public Administration. Sir, kindly accept our memento. So, photo अच्छा आना चाहिए. Now I request once again Dr. K.M. Jiauddin to felicitate Mr. R. Radhakrishnan sir, to come over and participate in this session and discussion as a discussion. So, so now I request KM Ziauddin Saab to felicitate Dr. Sajida Sultana. Thank you, ma'am, from all the way you came over to our university. Now I request, yes, sir, now to felicitate Suresh Babu. He came all the way from JNU to MANUU and delivered an interesting lecture about NEP and the crisis of the policy. Sir, we are grateful to you. So thank you so much. One announcement that next technical session and valedictory session will be held at School of Social Science Committee Room. So it is all of us to be come over here to have a group photo, and that will be third floor and Department of Sociology.